In 2016, SeaWorld Orlando made a statement by opening one of the biggest roller coasters in the theme park-rich state of Florida, named Mako. This shark-themed coaster would look to terrify its prey with its monstrous heights, steep drops, and wicked turns over the water. This certainly caught my attention and had been on my coaster bucket list for the last 5 years. Well, a few months ago, I finally had my go on this modern hypercoaster, and I'm here to give you my full in-depth review. Would Mako live up to the hype of being one of the best B&M Hypers in the world? Find out next. Hey everyone, it is Cullah Hale from Destination Thrills, and today I'm here with my review of Mako at SeaWorld Orlando in Orlando, Florida. Mako is a hypercoaster from Bollinger and Mabillard. You probably best know them as B&M. This coaster has a height of 200 feet, so just barely meeting the hypercoaster criteria. It has a top speed of 73 miles per hour and a track length of 4,760 feet. The ride opened in June of 2016, and I just so happened to be down in Orlando that year, playing in the Adult Volleyball National Tournament just a week before the ride opened. So I got to see the massive structure in person, but never actually had the chance to ride. Well, finally this summer during a family vacation, I was able to drive back over and finally get my ride on Mako. And I had a lot of hype coming in for this coaster, as most people have said this is one of the best B&M Hypers out there. And trust me, I've been on some good B&M Hypers like Diamondback, Nitro, Raging Bull, and Candemonium, which you will see in a review later. Those rides all deliver a smooth experience with hills that give you an excessive amount of that stomach-tickling floater airtime. So to hear so many enthusiasts saying that Mako was the best really set my expectations high for this ride. But would it live up to the hype of being the best B&M Hyper? Well, in this review, we will find out. So let's first start out by going through the ride experience. Now, I was lucky enough to get 4 rides within 30 minutes of entering the park on Mako. I rode 2 in the back and 2 in the very front. So I feel like I have a good mix of vantage points to give you a grasp on how the ride typically behaves. First off, the station and queue lines have some fun ocean and shark theming. Nothing crazy, but definitely enough to give the ride some character and set the scene. Now, the B&M Hyper trains with those clamshell restraints are some of the best in the business. So much comfort with a ton of freedom above the waist. I have praised these restraints and trains in other B&M Hyper and Giga reviews, and this was absolutely no different. Now, once you're buckled in, you are sent out of the station and directly up a 200-foot lift hill. The Orlando area has some great views, so I was definitely taking it all in as we were climbing higher and higher. Once you get to the top, you crest the apex and down the first drop. The angle is decently steep, so you get some strong floater air, especially if you are sitting in the back rows. One thing that was really neat was the fact that the layout was over this little lake, so it seemed as if the shark was dragging you straight into the water. Next up was this weird left-hand overbank turn. I say weird because the shape of it was much different than other overbank turns on other coasters. The turn at the top was really tight, and it gave you a blend of positive G-forces and a little bit of a tip-out sensation. And then when you exited the turn, you got the sensation that you were going into a drop with some slight negative G-forces. Normally an element like this is not memorable for me at all, but I really did enjoy it, especially when you sit on the left side because it feels like Mako is actually tipping you into the lake. Now, next up is the Camelback Hill. Good floater airtime, really nothing else to say about it. If you have been on other B&M Hypers, you will probably have had the same feeling on their Camelback Hills as well. A really good floater air moment. After the airtime hill, you dart straight into the hammerhead turn, and I'm so glad that they put a hammerhead turn element on a shark themed coaster, even though Mako is not a hammerhead shark. I just thought that was really cool, and I'm glad the park did that. This element isn't anything crazy, it's just a way to turn the coaster around, and it gives you a change of pace instead of just Camelback Hill after Camelback Hill. Now, you will get a heavy feeling throughout the turn, but that's about it when it comes to forces. Next, we have another Camelback Hill. This one felt the same as the first one, that heavenly floating feeling throughout the entire element. Now, once you exit this hill, you head up into a 90-degree right turn drop. Wasn't really expecting much from this, but I was surprised by how quickly you shifted into that drop. I wouldn't say it was jerky, but the airtime and laterals came at you really fast, which really got the adrenaline going. This is when I really noticed that Mako was becoming different than the other hypers that I had ridden. Following this turn drop, you go into the infamous speed hill. And I sort of hyped the speed hill up because I was really hoping to get that strong ejector airtime. I know that's a weird expectation to have for a B&M Hyper, but this was the element that was really raved about when I heard people argue why Mako was the best Hyper. Unfortunately, in my experience, the sensation was more floater air, just like the other Camelback Hills, so I was a bit disappointed. With that said, in the front seat, this is probably still my favorite element of the layout. Next up, you hit the mid-course brake run that does cut the pacing a bit, but the drop and the tilt to the left at the end of it gives you some fantastic, unexpected airtime, especially if you are in the back seat. In the back row, this actually might be my favorite part of the ride, really competing with that first massive drop. Why I really like this element so much is that my first ride, it really caught me off guard, and any element that can surprise me usually ends up being my favorite part of that ride. I don't know, there was just something sudden about it that really got my adrenaline pumping, and I absolutely love that feeling. Ahead of this drop is just a coast to the finish with some minor elevation changes and twists near the lake. Even though this finale is not even close to being intense, it really was a signature moment on Mako, which I could really appreciate, and it sort of gives you this graceful, glidey end to your shark encounter. After that, you pop straight up into the brake run and your ride is finished. So now that we've looked at the ride experience, it is time to give you my ratings of Mako. If this is your first time watching one of my coaster reviews, I will be rating this coaster in 5 specific categories: intensity, fun, uniqueness, comfort, and duration. Then I will give the ride an overall score at the end. All ratings will be on a 0 to 5 scale. First up is intensity. When I think of B&M Hypers, I don't really think of intense. Yes, they are super tall and fast rides, but B&M likes to take things a little easier on its riders, especially with this model. So typically there are no sudden direction changes or sensations that the ride is trying to rip you out of your seat. But with that said, someone who is afraid of heights or fast speeds would laugh at me for saying that Mako is not intense. It also has some pretty decent airtime moments as well, which you could consider kind of intense, so I do think Mako has just enough aggression to earn a 3 rating on intensity. Next is fun. Mako has some fantastic scenery, cool theming, floater airtime, and signature elements. Even though Mako isn't wild and out of control, this coaster still gives you energy and moments that will put a smile on any adrenaline junkie's face. So it was an easy decision for me to award Mako a 4 out of 5 rating for fun. Moving on to uniqueness. Now, although Mako does have some unique views and slightly different elements than other hypers, it looks like every other hyper, and it certainly feels like every other hyper, especially with the main features being the Camelback Hills and the floater airtime. So I am going to give Mako a 2 for uniqueness. I am staying away from the 1 score because it has just enough spice to give this B&M Hyper its own identity. Switching over to comfort. This is where B&M Hypers score big. Aside from the amazing clamshell restraints that give you the ultimate room and the comfiness of the seats, you have the glossy, smooth track that just feels like you are cutting through the air. Mako is no different, and even better, from my experience, this ride seemed to have avoided the dreaded B&M rattle, at least for now. So there is really nothing I can find wrong with the comfort of this ride, so Mako is getting the prestigious 5 out of 5 rating in this category. Alright, jumping over to duration, Mako gives you some great ride time. With several elements, the layout definitely does not feel short. It certainly isn't the longest coaster I've been on, and to be honest, if I'm comparing it to other B&M Hyper coasters, Mako definitely feels shorter than coasters like Nitro and Diamondback. So Mako won't continue its perfect score streak, but it still earns a 4 out of 5 for duration, which is a very good score. Finally, we have my overall rating. I had a lot of hype for Mako coming in, and I definitely can say it met a lot of my expectations. It behaved very similar to other B&M Hypers, which was the experience I was guessing Mako was going to deliver. And that is not a bad thing, as these Hypers have made my top 15 coasters list. I actually did a video of my top 15 coasters, and shameless plug, I will be linking that video in the card above. But the floater air and comfort of the ride certainly kept me coming back for more. There is definitely a lot of good qualities of this ride. However, for me personally, I prefer a more intense, out-of-control experience, and Mako just wasn't quite that. Now, in my head, I jump back and forth on giving this a 3.5 or a 4, so I think for the first time ever in these reviews, I'm going to go in between and give Mako a 3.8 rating overall. So this brings me back to the question we asked in the beginning of the video: is Mako the best B&M Hyper? In my opinion, I do not think Mako is the best hyper. My favorite hyper I will reveal in another video, but it certainly is at the top of my coasters list in this genre. And it will certainly be a contender in making my top 25 when I put that list together at the end of the year. So it is no shock to me at all that others would say it is their favorite B&M hyper, and I would highly recommend checking it out. So if you are considering checking out Mako at SeaWorld Orlando soon, here are some tips for riding the ride. Tip number 1, head to Mako first when you enter the park. I found that hitting up Mako right after opening was a fantastic plan because there was no line at all. It seemed that many people didn't make it around to this part of the park until later in the afternoon, so this meant I got to marathon the ride. Now, keep in mind you probably also want to try Mako later in the day to get a faster experience. The number 2 tip is the best seat will depend on what elements you like more. If you like speed and want better airtime through the speed hill, I suggest you sit in the front. If you want big air off the first drop and the camelbacks, then back is the way to go. Tip number 3, as I mentioned, I don't think Mako is super intense. So I believe this coaster is a great introduction for new enthusiasts who are looking to try taller, faster rides. Maybe not a starter ride, but definitely a good coaster for those looking to transition into riding bigger coasters. The 4th and final tip is you can film on Mako, which is so cool. SeaWorld Orlando does allow you to bring a GoPro on the ride if you properly secure it and get it checked by a ride op before boarding. As you can see in the videos that you're watching, I had a wrist mount that I used that kept the camera safely secured to my body. Do not attempt to film with a cell phone or handheld device, as you might cause severe injury if it slips out of your hand. You can also be removed from the park with no refund and potentially banned if you're caught doing so. So just make sure if you do want to film on the rides that you check out their website and make sure you're caught up to speed on all the rules and regulations on what you can bring on to film your experience. So this was my full in-depth review of Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, and now I want to hear from you. If you have ridden Mako before, comment below your thoughts on this coaster, along with your opinion on whether or not this is the best B&M Hyper coaster. Now, if you enjoyed this review, I have plenty more on my channel. I will link the playlist to all my coaster reviews in the description below, along with my review of the new for 2021 Jersey Devil coaster in the card above. So be sure to check those out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Destination Thrills, as we are the destination for all the latest theme park news, reviews, and content. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Cullah Hale. Stay safe, get out to SeaWorld and ride Mako, and have a good one.